A major storm is underway in the plains. We have blizzard warnings up for eastern Wyoming, northeastern Colorado, parts of northwest Kansas, northwest Nebraska, and I don't know if I mentioned South Dakota, but also in western South Dakota. Winter storm warnings also surround those. We have severe weather going on across parts of the Gulf states, from East Texas and points eastward, with flash flood watches from Louisiana northeast up into southern Tennessee. And the first winter storm watches are up from northwestern Virginia and eastern West Virginia all the way up to upstate New York and in a few counties in Vermont. And there'll probably be a few more counties added to that. We're going to get into all of this big storm as it's driving some big weather changes across the U.S. in the long range. And that's all coming up on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which tonight is brought to you by
Omni True Value. I'm sorry. I jumped the gun. It is being brought to you, ladies and gentlemen, by Omni, the only place that you should go to for mulch, for rock salt.
Wait, rock salt. They're at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York.
There it is.
In southwest Suffolk County on Long Island, and they are Long Island's largest rock salt source. So if you need rock salt, you don't have to be on Long Island to go to Omni, because a lot of folks that live outside of Long Island and can't find rock salt where they are, go to Omni for it because they have the lowest prices. They also have mag ice pellets and flakes, Pellido, all the great snow and ice melt products, new snow blowers, if you need one or two or more, and of course any other supplies you need to get you through the upcoming winter. 631-756-1125 for the best prices anywhere. And the website, Mr. Rayo, is
OmniTrueValue.com, Joe. Hey, all those batteries, those are going to be going quickly next week for all of the toys and all of the contraptions that are going to be sold in the coming days ahead or Christmas presents. So whatever, you're going to need some batteries. The Hess trucks, I'm not sure. I don't know if they still are including batteries with purchase of the Hess truck.
You have to purchase the Hess truck online now, I think.
Exactly, because there is no more Hess gas, but the Hess truck remains. But in any case,
I have a whole bunch of them that I bought over the years. I still have them in their original boxes.
So you're a collector. My son is asking for one from 1992, I think. He's gotten just about every single Hess truck as a Christmas gift, going all the way up until fairly recently. And you go to his house, and I think instead of a train or trains, the Hess trucks are there surrounding the tree. But any case, if you need a battery or batteries, go to Omni. They've got every single battery conceivable that you could ask for or wish for or hope for, and you can order them online at OmniTrueValue.com.
All right, let's get into weather tonight. It's a very busy night, and just a hint on the long range when we get to it, Joe. If you think back to February of 1934, when New York City set its record low of 15 degrees below zero.
Right.
And I remember looking, I don't remember it happening because I wasn't born yet, obviously. Neither was Joe. But I remember looking at the weather maps, the surface maps for that day. From remember the ones they used to send out by mail? What were they called?
Oh, daily weather maps.
Right. Well, they had them going back to 1934, and when I was working at the Weather Service, I remember they had copies of this, and it was a 1071 high that came down through central Canada and moved right into the Northeast. Usually they come down in Western Canada. This came down in central Canada, went to the Eastern Lakes, and the core of the cold air came right into the Northeast. So other than the fact that I saw that on a map, at least in my weather experience, I don't ever remember seeing a 1071 high in Montana. But in fact, today, on the late afternoon GFS run for this brutal, what looks like a brutally cold air mass is going to come in sometime later next week into the plains and Rockies first, and then drop southward. A 1073 high, Joe.
Yes.
1073.
If it were coming in from Quebec, we could call it Le Monstre,
Right.
or the monster high. But that's a big high pressure dome that over Montana, you say, big sky country. It's a good thing the sky is so big, because they need something big to hold something that large in terms of pressure. Wow.
Yeah, and no kidding around though. It's a brutally cold air mass that's coming down. Daytime, I was looking at some of the temperature anomalies with that thing, and they were off the wall, and showing daytime highs. If this verifies, where daytime highs weren't even getting above 25 or 30 degrees below zero.
Wow, frigid. Oh my goodness, and winter. Well, the astronomical winter has not yet begun, although meteorologically winter did begin 13 days ago, and this is an early start for a frigid air mass such as this.
Now, I do have a live shot here, and this is a camera courtesy of KEVN in Rapid City, South Dakota. I'm going to get myself out of the way. Now, I'm going to try something here, so you can help me. I'm going to try to put this up full screen, and let's see if it comes up full screen for everybody. So you tell me if you can see this. This is the Loud American Roadhouse in Rapid City, South Dakota, and you can see actually, whenever you could see snowflakes on a camera, it's snowing pretty hard, or fairly hard. I can see it on my computer screen. I can actually see the snowflakes on the camera here. So it looks like it's at the very least, it's moderate snow and blowing snow.
And where is this now located?
This is in Rapid City, South Dakota. Can you see it on the screen?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
there's
most definitely.
They're going to see a car coming through the intersection here.
Yes, here he is.
Yep, there he goes.
What the hell is he doing out there at this hour of the night in those kind of conditions?
Well, it must be fun, because their car's in the parking lot at the Loud American Roadhouse. Must be something like Texas Roadhouse.
Yeah, I'd rather be indoors than outdoors in this kind of weather. I can bet what it must be like to be outdoors. And this is the kind of the part of the country where I think they have devices on the street where you can plug your car in to keep the engine block warm, lest it crack in extreme cold. And this looks like extreme cold.
I can't.
Or at least cold and snow. My goodness.
I can't relate to that. So this storm's going to be coming into the east. The main problem, I know all the snow lovers are going gaga. Here it comes. But you've got too strong a primary here, Joe. You got this primary low. You got the secondary low. The primary needs to go away. And it's just not going to do that, and that's going to probably pivot up just enough warm air to change it over to rain, certainly for coastal areas. But this still could wind up being a fairly solid snowfall for areas north and west of the coast, especially from central Pennsylvania up through upstate New York, the Catskills, and points north up into the Adirondacks, and eventually up into central and northern New England.
Yeah, it's going to be. Well, we said this yesterday. We showed this from the Climate Prediction Center. The headline, they've already been headlining this for the week of Christmas, the 20th through the 26th, that temperatures are going to be averaging well below seasonal norms just about every place, particularly so out in the plains and across the Great Lakes. As I mentioned last night, we may very well be seeing some record low temperatures during that period from the 20th to the 26th. And the overall forecast for that time frame tonight from CPC hasn't changed all that much. So it looks like we're in for bitterly, if not in some cases brutally cold weather for the upcoming week, the next 6 to 10 days or 8 to 14 days coming up.
All right, so let's get the ball rolling here. I'm going to do the watches and warnings, and Joe's going to do the satellites and radars tonight. Welcome to everybody on the chat board. We're so glad you're here. Those of you who want to follow extra winter weather coverage all winter long, there's a link pinned up to the top of the chat board. I have a cheap subscription site. Doesn't cost much, $2 a month to start, unless you need extra help. And there are other tiers. But the link is up there for your enjoyment and your convenience. And of course, you can download my free weather app, the Meteorologist Joe Cioffi weather app, on Google Play or on the App Store. So there's my shameless little self-promotion of the night. Now let's get to it. We'll go to the watches and warnings because we got a whole slew of them tonight to talk about. And we've got blizzard warnings. Let's start with the blizzard warnings that are up in eastern Wyoming, northeastern Colorado, northwestern Kansas, Nebraska, western Nebraska, the western half of South Dakota. Winter storm warnings surround all of that. They've put up a blizzard warning also in Minnesota. I'm going to guess that is Duluth is in this, is the county involved. Yes, it is Duluth that is under a blizzard warning for this system. We've got winter weather advisories surrounding that. Some winter storm watches up on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. In the south, we have a tornado watch. Actually, I think it's still 2 tornado watches in East Texas and into Louisiana and southern Arkansas. Let me give this a quick refresh. All right, we'll wait till we go to the SPC map. We do have a large area under tornado watches, flash flood watches for much of southeast Louisiana, northeastward to the southern counties of Tennessee and into northwest Georgia. Winter storm watches are now up for northwestern Virginia and northeastern West Virginia. That could be more for ice than anything else. Winter storm watches through central Pennsylvania into northeastern Pennsylvania, southern New York to the Catskills, northward, so basically west of I-87, and then going up into the Adirondacks, and then a couple of counties in southern Vermont and northwestern Massachusetts have been put under winter storm watches up at the moment. We have winter wind advisories up for the great state of Maine, and looks like some freezes down in southern Arizona. They had winter weather advisories up in southeastern Arizona yesterday, so now they've got freeze watches there and some freeze warnings. So cold air is going all the way down into the southwest. Very busy here, and let's go right to SPC. SPC has 2 working tornado watches in play, and we saw them on the map. And this is due to the fact that they have the enhanced risk of severe weather from East Texas into southern Mississippi, with Louisiana in between. Almost the whole state of Louisiana, except the south, is in an enhanced risk for severe weather. And that, by the way, is coming with a 10% tornado risk. Now, for tomorrow, we're going to move the risk area further east with enhanced in southeast Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, into the westernmost part of the Florida Panhandle. Risk extends into Georgia. That also comes in the enhanced area with a 10% tornado risk. And on day 3, which is for Thursday into Friday, it moves to the southeast coast from North Carolina southward. Slight risk for coastal South Carolina down into central Florida. So a lot of severe weather here. No surprise. You've got a major storm, huge trough that's in the western part of the United States that's swinging eastward. That is really just driving the entire scheme here, and will continue to do so as it moves eastward.
And on the chat board, Northeast Weather Gonzo. I don't recall seeing Northeast Weather Gonzo.
He's new.
He's a new guy. And welcome to the chat board, Northeast Weather Gonzo. He is pointing out, Joe, that, and he's announcing this to everyone. Everyone is in capital letters here. Everyone, Climate Prediction Center has a risk for heavy snow for December 22nd through the 25th across all of the northern, mid-Atlantic, and northeast states. Now, I want to point out, in all fairness, that this is about the third or fourth time that they have placed the Northeast under the potential for possible heavy snow, going on back even into November. And this is just a long-range outlook. And what Northeast Weather Gonzo does not mention, but I will mention here, is that the potential is only a slight potential. They have slight, they have moderate, they have high risk or high potential. This is only a slight risk. And again, we're talking about the 22nd through the 25th across all of the northeast, northern mid-Atlantic, and northeast states. The potential is that after we get past this weekend, Joe, after we get past, actually not this weekend, but Thursday night and Friday, that the next really significant weather system will be moving into our neck of the woods during that 22nd to the 25th period. And from this vantage point, if you look at some of the models, some of the model guidance, it may be just like what we're looking at for the end of this week, a pattern where it may start as snow, but could very well be chiefly rain. But just to cover themselves, the Climate Prediction Center has indeed the mention of the possibility, slight as it may be, for a snowfall, a significant snowfall for that December 22nd through 25th period. I'll bring that up a little bit later to show everybody, but I just wanted to answer or respond to Northeast Weather Gonzo.
Well, actually, he used to be Fled Weather, a.k.a. Fled Weather.
Well, we remember Fled Weather. There we go. Well, that's then he's not new. He's an old friend of ours.
Yes, he is.
And William Huber says, Joe Rayo, it's always in long-range forecast, which never comes. It's total BS. You hear total BS. Okay. Well, I don't know if it's
well, look. This is what you said in your disclaimer was basically, hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
True. And again, you do a double take sometimes. What the heck? I'm gonna bring it up right now. Just show everybody, Joe, to maybe they want to.
Okay, you're on. Go ahead and do that, and then go to the satellite and radars after that.
All right. So here you go. We're gonna lick. Those of you who are snow lovers, you can lick your chops over this area. And again, slight. Let's underscore that word, slight, from December 22nd through December 25th. The Climate Prediction Center has everybody outlined in the little purple hatched area or hatch region, and that includes much of. See, already I'm getting phone calls on this. Anyway, I'm going to turn that down. Come on, turn it off. There we go. Thank you. So we got the Great Lakes, the lower peninsula of Michigan, northern Ohio Valley, down to the mid-Atlantic into the Delmarva Peninsula, and then across all of the northeastern United States in that slight risk, slight probability for a potential significant or maybe heavy snowfall between the 22nd and the 25th. But again,
I cannot imagine a situation, by the way, where they would put a high risk, even a moderate risk.
Yeah, right, that far out.
Yeah, slight risk makes sense. I can't imagine you'd put a slight risk for a forecast something 10 days or more away.
Well, anyway, they know it's Christmas time, and they know that people like Fled Weather, or excuse me, Weather Gonzo, and other snow lovers are chomping at the bit and waiting for that potential for a white Christmas. And this is it. There's your potential right now for a white Christmas in that time frame. But again, from what I saw and looked at in some of the mid and long range outlooks, that seems to me like it could start as snow, but could end up going the distance with more of a rainy as opposed to a snowy weather pattern. But it's there, and we'll examine that in the days to come. Now, you wanted to get the some of the radar. What portion of the country would you like to see first, Joe? I mean, Rapid City, South Dakota.
Well, bring up the national radar first.
Okay. Can I do that? Well, I can.
I certainly can do it. So,
I mean, I have
all right, you
the
know what?
wrap. I have the I
I'll
have
do it.
the wrap weather, which gives
All right, so
each.
you get the local radars ready. I'll do the satellite. I got the sat. I got my glass of water. We'll do the sat. We'll do the satellite. I'll do the satellite and the national radar, and then you could do the local radars. So
Okay,
here
all
we
right.
go, and I've got the U.S. satellite. I switched over to the lightning strikes again because it's so active, and you can see that line that runs from southern Missouri down to eastern Arkansas and into northwestern Louisiana with some very heavy thunderstorms. There have been a few tornado warnings already out of all of this. So certainly a very, very active squall line, and the rotation on the satellite is just so well defined and obvious, sitting there in southern Nebraska as the storm just churns away. It's this giant arm lifts up toward Minnesota and toward the Great Lakes. Very, very impressive. Meanwhile, it's dry in the east. We've got the cold high. There's a storm. If you look on the upper right, you can see the circulation of the Atlantic storm that is between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland that's now moving northwestward. And we've got cold air that is coming down on the west side of that through New England and down into the mid-Atlantic states. In fact, that wedge actually builds all the way down into to me, where I'm in the low 40s here in North Georgia, waiting for this this warm front try to get through here so I can get the temperatures back up. But very, very impressive on the satellite. And as we check out the radar tonight on the national scale, I'll give it a quick refresh, and you'll notice the system is literally sitting in the middle of the map, and it's so dominating the weather scene with radars relatively quiet on either side. There's a little bit of light snow, by the way, coming in from the northwest, uh, at least aloft in northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and then there's a solid area of snow just to the east of Caribou that's backing westward through New Brunswick and dropping southwestward. Some of that will probably get into northern Maine. But the obvious feature here, Joe, is this storm system. Very, very impressive.
Very impressive indeed. I mean, this is delivering everything but the kitchen sink. Blizzard conditions, severe thunderstorms, potential tornadoes, and this system is not done. Obviously, it's going to gradually migrate eastward across the rest of the nation and will become part of our weather beginning late on Thursday and carrying over on into Friday as well.
So pop up your radars.
All right. Well, which one would you like
Well,
first?
why don't we start with the severe weather? So let's get a radar down in Shreveport might work.
Shreveport. Yeah, we do have some activity, although it looks like the main line, and I have to here now again. So hang on there. It looks like the main line is off to the north and west of Shreveport, but that only means that Shreveport will be getting into it probably during the overnight hours. And the last thing you really want, probably the most frightening thing that you can ever experience, is the potential for severe thunderstorms and possible tornadic activity under the cover of darkness in the middle of the night. But there you see a rather significant squall line moving in across northwestern Louisiana and into eastern sections of Texas. And there's some big boomers up here, and also out in advance of it, some widely scattered moderate to heavy activity over portions of central and northern sections of Louisiana. So rather major. Let me just move the map now to a place that's a little more toward the north and west. This is Dallas-Fort Worth. Well, that's completely out of it. So let's see what else I can show you. LZK, that's in the middle of Arkansas. That's Little Rock, Arkansas. And it looks like they have some moderate to heavy activity, although I'm not sure whether or not any of this is truly severe, but you can see that from central into eastern sections of Arkansas, some heavy-duty activity rumbling rapidly to the east and firing up some severe storms there. And if we go further over toward, let's say, northern sections of Mississippi, not much to show you. This is Columbus Air Force Base in Greenwood, Mississippi. You can see just the beginnings there, way off to the western edge of the radar on the final few frames of the loop. Some of this activity beginning to impinge or encroach upon western sections of Mississippi as well. So that pretty much is what it's like down in the Southland, Joe. Let's go up and take a look at, let's say, into Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And this is interesting. Take a look. Look at the movement. The obvious storm center is probably somewhere about here, and the precipitation is rotating in the counterclockwise fashion from the east and lifting up across, again, South Dakota on up toward North Dakota. Some of this activity may not necessarily be snow. I know that in parts of North Dakota, they've been warning folks of possible icy conditions as well. Let's go further to the east and go to, let's see, UDX in South Dakota. See how that's going on. And you could see, again, the spiral nature of the storm system. Now we can see that the precipitation is spiraling in from the north and east. This is for Rapid City, South Dakota, New Underwood area. And again, they are likely seeing significant snow and maybe even a touch of sleet or ice mixing in. This is where all of the blizzard activity is being forecast for the next day or so. So you can see that at the moment, at least, the heavy-duty precipitation is being concentrated in the spiral bands that are rotating around the center of this rather massive low-pressure storm system.
David Schwartz hitting a super chat. Thank you, David, for hitting the tip jar. Joe, he wants to know, and I'm setting up one of the other maps. If you could quickly just get into, because a few people messaged me about the fact that they saw a meteor shower late last night or early, right before sunrise.
Yeah, this is the night, actually, the peak night of probably the best meteor shower of the year, of the annual meteor showers, called the Geminid meteor shower. And normally
it's cloudy.
Normally it's cloudy. Here in the New York area, we actually have excellent sky conditions to watch the meteor shower. And if you want to see some, you might want to go out after the show, after we finish the show, and look quick, because unfortunately this year we have a waning gibbous moon, 70% illuminated moon, which when it comes over the horizon at about 9 o'clock or 9:30 tonight is going to be in the sky for the rest of the night and acting like a gigantic spotlight in the sky. And the only meteors you're going to see from the Geminids tonight with that big moon in the sky are the very brightest. Now, the Geminids are known to produce fireball meteors, and the fireballs usually appear as a greenish color. They're rather colorful meteor display. And normally, if there was no moon in the sky and you had a perfect dark sky condition with no bright lights, you might be able to see as many as 60 to 120 meteors an hour tonight. The moon is going to knock out a large majority of those fainter streaks, but they do produce some very big, bright, outstandingly bright meteors. And so if you're out and about even after 9 or 10 o'clock, and if you want to care to stay out for any length of time and bundle up, just take a look up. The area where the meteors are going to be spanning or radiating from is going to be directly overhead at 2 o'clock in the morning. So if you're not doing anything after 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock and you want to see maybe a shooting star or two, bundle up, go outside, look up, look around, and maybe a few will pass before your line of sight. That, again, is the Geminid shower. They're at their peak overnight tonight. And again, if it weren't for that moon, it'd really be a fantastic display. But unfortunately, the moon is going to cut into the lion's share of meteors that you normally would see. And so only the very brightest Geminid meteors will be visible tonight. But still, if you see just one or two of those, that can make the entire night, albeit how cold it will be where you are, well worthwhile. So good luck. I might even get up before daybreak tomorrow and go outside, check out the sky for a few minutes in spite of that big bright moon. But it's cold out there, Joe.
It is. It is.
But when I was younger, I'd say, I could take 15 degrees. No big deal. I'd stay out there for like an hour or two. Now, at my age, At my age, that ain't fun anymore.
Northerly wind down the Hudson Valley always brings the coldest air southward.
Yep.
Here are the snow. Here are the snow amounts being forecast now. There is snow already on the ground, so this is starting at 7 p.m. tonight, on top of whatever's there. So at least another 10 to 15 inches in many places, and in one spot there on the Wyoming South Dakota border, another 26 inches. Believe it or not, big amounts up into southwestern North Dakota as well. And you see an area of heavy snow that sort of snakes down all the way into Nebraska here. I'm sorry, that's I'm trying to. Where's the geography? Which does Kansas? Everything's sort of boxed off. So there's Colorado. There's Kansas. Too many lines here. That's Nebraska. So that's that snaking area of a foot to a foot and a half down in southern South Dakota into Nebraska. Sorry, I lost my bearings there for a second. And then where they have the blizzard warning up, and this is the wind coming from the east around that big storm off of Lake Superior is producing 2 foot plus lake effect, I guess, if we can call it, and being enhanced by the storm itself with its own precip of up 2 feet or more. So hence the blizzard warning for Duluth, just a narrow stripe there on the east shores of Lake Superior. Also some big snow amounts in northern Wisconsin and into the upper peninsula of Michigan. Lesser amounts in the lower peninsula of only a coating to an inch or two, or maybe 3 in 1 or 2 spots. And then as we move into the northeast, I'm going to extend this out into at another time frame here. I'll just go back 1 second. Okay, they didn't make the amounts too much larger because I had the time frame set for late Thursday. So this goes to Friday evening. And this map has been updated now to show snow amounts. And you can see there's a coating to maybe an inch that extends down to central and western Maryland and in northeastern West Virginia, northwestern Virginia, because, again, the winter storm warning's probably going to be more for freezing rain and some sleet. And then you start to get into some snow amounts as you move into central Pennsylvania, where we have some 5, 6, 7-inch amounts being indicated along I-80. And then on the New York side in southern New York, 6 to 8 there. In parts of the Catskills, some places 6, 7, 8 inches also. But away from that, and you'll notice there's a division here. This is what happens when you have a primary to secondary where the secondary doesn't completely take over. The warm air actually rides up along I-87 between the Catskills on one side and the Berkshires on the other. So you have much less in the way of snow, and then the numbers go up again when you go into northwest Connecticut, western Massachusetts, and into southern Vermont. So it's just the topography makes a huge difference, and also some rather largish amounts up in the Adirondacks of let's call it 8 to 12, and at least initially we're seeing the numbers going up in Maine. So those numbers are going to go up because they're going to snow Friday night into Saturday. So a lot of the numbers that you see in northern New England are going to be going up. There's also going to be a touch of ocean effect along Cape Cod because of the wind coming in from off the warm ocean and the cold air that is driving southward around that storm that's east of Nova Scotia. There's going to be a little bit of ocean effect, enough to leave a coating to an inch. This is not going to be a big storm, I think, in terms of big snow amounts overall. But it's going to be a moderate snowfall for these places inland.
And the places that are along the coastal plain and even a little ways inland, Joe, the problem for snow lovers is that the lowest end of the atmosphere may be just a little bit too warm to support snow. Case in point, LaGuardia Airport, I took a look at the 12Z foos from earlier today, and at 60 hours, and that would translate to 7 o'clock in the evening on Thursday, the T1, the boundary level temperature at the lowest level of the atmosphere at LaGuardia is 4 degrees Celsius. And that's really warm. I mean, it suggests that the final 1,500 feet down to the surface level will be quite warm, and you may indeed start off. In fact, I have no question in my mind that even in New York City and Long Island, when precipitation arrives, the column, the cold air, is going to be all the way down to the surface and will allow for snow to fall. But the problem is that as winds turn into a more easterly or east-southeasterly direction, east-northeasterly direction, I should say, it's just going to warm things up too much to allow for any kind of significant snow or sticking snow. And so the result will be a very quick transition from snow over to rain. And so, as Joe has on the 24-hour probability of snow accumulating to more than an inch, centered on Thursday evening at 7 o'clock, you can see that the best chances would be the 50% zone. That area of dark blue would be over portions of western Orange County, northwestern New Jersey, Sussex County, for example, and then right up along the Hudson River, west of the Hudson. So if you're west of the Hudson on Thursday night, you have a fair chance of seeing at least an inch or two of snow, if not maybe a bit more. But places just to the east of the Hudson and all the way down the coast to New York and across Long Island, the odds of you seeing even an inch is relatively small, at least in this particular category.
And just moving it over here to there's 6-hour periods here. So the 6-hour period from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. It pretty much covers the same geography. Maybe it's just a shade further to the south, but I suspect that you might see this. Well, tomorrow will be a better time frame, better day to look at this particular map as far as having a fair amount of confidence in what's being put up. Again, this is the probability of at least 1. If we go to the probability of at least 4, let's do that. And I'm going to go to the let me go to the 72-hour map. Just a second here. So let's go to the 72-hour map with the probability of at least 4. And you'll see that in this case, okay, let me just get always. This is a nice site, but you got to punch so many buttons to get the map you want. So they have actually, Joe, just in the northwest, the 50% for the probability of at least 4, right in the northwest corner of New Jersey. And you see where the dark reds are. That's 80 to 100% probability of at least 4. Central PA to northeast PA to the Catskills, west of I-87 going north, also in the Berkshires and in the Adirondacks. So this is, and then moving up further into northern New England, into Vermont and New Hampshire. And again, the coastal plain, a cheap thrill maybe at the start if it snows for a short time right along the immediate coast, and then it goes over to rain. Everyone is saying about is maybe the high will build down, the cold air will be more important. If the primary weren't so strong, I could be on that. I could take that side of the argument. But the primary low is just too dominant, and I just don't see how it's going to happen. I also think the GFS is just too cold. I just think the GFS is too cold, and we'll show that in a moment.
Normally I would, in a case of a potential winter storm, I would say that if you want to see the cold model, it would be the NAM. But regardless of what model is the coldest, as I said last night, and I'll stress this again, as long as you have the cold air in place, you don't want a major, and I know the news media love when the major winter storm, major storm coming to, you don't want a major storm. All you need, if you want a nice, steady, significant, and even substantial snowfall, is a little wave of low pressure interacting with the cold weather, cold air, coming up, let's say, along the eastern seaboard, and just stirring the atmosphere up just enough to provide you with enough moisture and enough energy to provide you with snow. If you have one that is very significant, and this could turn out to be, before this is all over said and done, a rather substantial or rather significant coastal storm or even a nor'easter, that's the last thing you want if you're along the coast, because again, it draws in just too much mild air from the ocean and punches it inland, and you really have to go in and away from that airflow to hold on to the cold air and hold on to your snowfall. This is the problem for this coming Thursday night and Friday for all of you snow lovers. And again, the immediate New York or tri-state area is that this system may be just a little bit too strong to set the stage for a major snowfall.
Now, what I did was I have up, Joe, the 6Z run from the 9th, which was last Friday. Okay, so we are now more than 126 hours from this. This was the forecast for Wednesday morning, for tomorrow morning. All right. So I want everybody to look at this. You've got the deep cutoff sitting there in southern Nebraska. You have a deep cutoff sitting out in the ocean at 40 and 65. Okay. So just to illustrate, you got this, and then right up here in Canada is the bottom part of the block that's kind of pushing down, separating these two features. Okay. Now, that run did this. The upper low offshore pulled out. The upper low in the Midwest slid southeastward into Virginia and off the Jersey coast. And you see it there wrapped up south of Long Island. All right. So now let's look at the surface map that it had for this. And this is where you have the primary low. There's your primary. Sitting this evening, sitting right on the Nebraska-Kansas border. Actually, it did a really good job pinpointing where that storm was going to be 5.5 days away. And now there's the storm to the east in the Atlantic is still there on the picture. The primary low into Illinois completely dies out. Secondary low takes over off the North Carolina coast, moves off the New Jersey coast, buries New Jersey, Long Island, southern New England. You had a 968 low sitting at 39.5 and 70.5. Okay?
Right.
That was 5 days ago. So I'm just going to roll this back. I want to put that upper air. This is Tuesday night's upper air. 6Z, the run from 6Z January 9th. Now, let's go to today. Not too bad. A little off in the east. The low was out offshore, the Atlantic low. Okay?
Right.
Instead, it's sitting up in northern Maine. The cutoff, it's got it almost virtually in the exact spot that it had it. That one, it hit on the nose. Okay? Now, what happens? The upper low to the east pulls away. The upper low now, this is the issue. This upper low, instead of weakening and then kind of sliding southeastward under the block is giving way slightly or just enough that the upper low just survives, and instead of coming east, it actually goes up to Wisconsin.
Right.
Instead of diving down into Virginia, digging underneath the block, it's going up into Wisconsin. And that's the difference. That is the big difference. The block was in a perfect position on that run 5 days ago. But in reality, it's just shifting enough to the north to allow the primary low to just survive rather than dive southeastward. It moves towards the Great Lakes. So on the surface, you wind up with this.
And that's what we have said over and over for a good number of years here on Joe and Joe. If you remember what Joe showed from last week, they had that storm system. This is the one that affected us and brushed us on Sunday. That was the one that dropped a grand total of about an inch or two of snow on top of me on Sunday evening. And they had that storm wound up a few hundred miles south of Nova Scotia, whereas it actually ended up wound up north of Nova Scotia.
And,
It was
yeah,
and
exactly.
and the thing is, everything, as we've always said, before you start getting all excited about the next system that's on the weather docket and what it may very well do, let's first see what the system ahead of it does. The assumption was that with that storm system so wound up south of Nova Scotia, that would help support the southeastward movement of that big storm over the nation's midsection, which would set the stage for a storm off the mid-Atlantic coast, which would set the stage for possibly a big snowfall Friday into Saturday of this week. But no, that storm system from last weekend, instead of going where it was projected to go, ended up being several hundred miles further to the north, and that made all the difference in the world as to where the system we're watching now for the end of this week ultimately is going to go. So instead of going south and east off the mid-Atlantic coast, the system remained quite strong. It didn't lateral its energy to a new system off the mid-Atlantic coast to set the stage for a snowstorm. Instead, the primary remained stronger than originally projected, went up into the Great Lakes. There will be a second storm off the coast by the weekend, but unfortunately, it's not going to be enough or develop apparently fast enough to cut off the warm air advection from the ocean, which will flood in here Thursday night late into Friday and change whatever precip we get from the first system to our west from snow over to rain.
Right. No, that pretty much sums it up.
Yep.
And you see it here. There's your primary, your secondary forms. Right there is the reflection southeast of the Delmarva Peninsula, and even though the surface low on the GFS, the other models have the surface low right on the coast, which I think makes more sense. Even if the GFS is right, taking a surface low south and east of the coast and offshore, there's too much warm air. The damage has already been done, and that's that. And maybe you could save coastal eastern New England, might get a changeover back to snow before it ends, but it isn't going to amount to much anyway. Now,
and there's a discontinuity, by the way, in the colors. Now, I don't blame I don't blame Tropical Tidbits for this. There must be the algorithm must say, okay, this is going to be snow, this is going to be ice, this is going to be rain, the greens and the blues and the purples, whatever. But the discontinuity that I'm pointing out is that when you match up the colors to the temperatures at 2 meters on the same model, you've got the 32-degree line like flying well north of us, and yet it's still showing on the precipitation map blue for snow. And you say, oh, it's still going to be snowing as of 1 a.m. on Friday morning, and yet that doesn't match up with what the temperatures are projected to be, because the temperatures are showing that the freeze line is well to the north. So you can't
Yeah, you have to look at it. You can't just look at what the map prints out. You have to look at the numbers, and you have to look at the isotherms and everything else, and the 850 and all the levels in between. Yeah, it just doesn't work for the coastal areas. Inland, north of 84, it's west of 87. It's a whole nother ball game, and you folks you snow lovers there will do okay. And you can see the ice, by the way, which is going to be a problem in Pennsylvania and northwestern Virginia and northeastern West Virginia as this develops. And then, of course, eventually the secondary takes over, but by that time, it's long gone. And I'm just going to go back to the map so we could take a look at the upper air again, because we're going to go look at the long range. And we do have a very interesting upper air here setting up in the long range. The block is still there. Pressures all across the Arctic region are above normal, which means that we have a negative Arctic oscillation, which displaces cold to the south, and it's a very big negative Arctic oscillation. And you can see this next trough that dives down. This is now next Thursday, diving down from Canada and moving into the east. And I mean, that's impressive. Now, I don't care what it shows on the surface. Joe, this is a very deep trough. If it verifies to do a dive like this, something's going to happen somewhere. I don't know how this is going to evolve ultimately, but if you're going to have all this cold air that's going to be coming straight down from the Arctic into the plains and into the Rockies with a deep trough like this, you got to think that somewhere something's going to happen. Now, I'll bring up the surface in a moment, but even taking it down to the end of the forecast period, we still have troughing from northern Canada down into the eastern part of the United States. You still have ridging up in the west. Your PNA is positive, your EPO is negative, your NAO is negative. So even if it doesn't show anything specific, the more important thing to take away from this is that this is a wintry pattern. And it's a pattern that you're not going to see the details in terms of the troughs and the short waves this far out. You can see what the map is doing for this time frame on this model run. You know it's going to change. So forget about getting excited about whatever it shows beyond the 10 days. But if you have something resembling this, my guess is you're probably going to have some opportunities here between now and the end of the year. So don't cry yourself to sleep every night because it hasn't snowed yet. All right, just bear that in mind.
I mean, it is already, and we're not yet at astronomical winter, but we are into meteorological winter, 13 days in, and we already have seen and are seeing an exceedingly rather robust, very active pattern, and that I think bodes well if you're a storm lover or a snow lover. That bodes well for the upcoming winter season. You don't want to see a winter that, is quote dead and not showing much of anything. Although in such cases, sometimes it takes the better part of the winter to really rev up, and sometimes we get it, in late January or February. But right now, from what I'm seeing, Joe, this is going to take us right through December and right into January with a very active pattern. Now, whether or not this, flattens out or fades out later in January, February is something that none of us can answer, but at least for weather lovers, snow lovers, storm lovers, cold weather lovers, I think you're going to be in your element these next 2 or 3 weeks.
Now here's after this storm goes by, it does get cold here in the east. I mean, it's not Arctic cold, but it gets cold enough. The thicknesses are dropping. It's a broad, bowlish type cold air that's coming in. And now here comes the big, getting ready for the big high, and that deep trough coming down. And here it is. And this is we're already now 7 days. There's a 1064 high there, Joe, in southwestern Canada, which becomes a 1070 high in western Montana. You see the Arctic front.
Look at that, yeah.
I mean, and look at the gradient, the upslope here is going to be fun. The upslope snows in Colorado with something like that. The gradient is crazy. I mean, that's insane, that gradient.
It looks like between the high over western Montana and the low over western Lake Superior, there must be at least 20 lines or 20 isobars in between. It is a crazy type of pattern. And
by the way, there's a 1040-ish high with cold air here in the east as that low is diving southeastward with that big high. There's a low that's off the southeast coast that is probably going to try to get some energy from this diving trough to usher in the cold air. Now, the model handles it this way. The Arctic front coming in from the west, the coastal low moving northward. The Arctic front catches the coastal low, at which point you get the explosion, and you see all the cold air just pouring in into the plains, goes all the way down into Texas, into the southeast, and then eventually into the eastern part of the United States just in time for Christmas. And it stays cold right through the end of the forecast period. Actually, and another cold front comes through around the 27th or 28th, at least on this run, but who knows if that's going to look like that.
That kind of reminds me, the pattern that is being suggested by the GFS for around Christmas. It reminds me of the of the Groundhog Day blizzard of 1976.
I was going to say that.
I mean, Sunday was February 1st, and on that day, temperatures in New York were around 50 degrees. We had light to moderate rainfall. Come Sunday night, the rain was coming down very heavily, but there was a very, very sharp Arctic front just to the west of New York, and a storm was kind of wavering up along the eastern seaboard. They kind of met, the Arctic front and the storm met just south of New York City and Long Island, and it was like you injected steroids into that storm. The darn thing just exploded. By the time it passed Cape Cod, Joe, the barometric pressure of that storm, and this was only within a few hours, went all the way down to 28.50, as low as a mature hurricane in the middle of the summertime. The cold air just swept in, poured in very, very rapidly. It was something like 40 degrees at 5 a.m. It was 11 degrees in New York at 7 a.m. In between 4 and 7, the rain changed to snow. There was lightning. There was thunder. Some spots got a quick 4 or 5 inches out of it. But by the time we got to like 8 o'clock in the morning, it was all gone. It was a roaring wind, but dazzling sunshine and blue skies as the storm rolled rapidly up toward Nova Scotia. So that's what can happen when you have a storm interact with a major bout of very cold air. And it was very, very short-lived, but it was, you talk about a cheap thrill. This wasn't a cheap thrill. This was just a thrill. I was able to actually watch. I had one of those indoor-outdoor thermometers, and in my room, I was actually able to see between 5 and 6 a.m. It wasn't mercury. It was a bluish liquid or whatever. But I was able to watch the darn thing actually fall right before my eyes. You talk about falling temperatures. These were falling temperatures. So I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen, Christmas time, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, or whatever. But you could see. I mean, look at that map right there. The European 2-meter air temperature. Look at all of those lines, those isotherms just jammed together in the nation's midsection, marking or showing you where that cold front is. Now, if we have any kind of a wave of low pressure moving along the eastern seaboard and that cold air catches up with that storm, all bets are off. We'll see. That's much too far in the future to provide you with a forecast with any precision. But again, there you go, folks. I mean, you want a white Christmas, or you're hoping or dreaming of a white Christmas, there it is. And that probably, Joe, is why the folks at CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, have issued the possibility, slight as it may be, for a significant snowfall for much of the Northeast, going back to the Great Lakes and Mid-Atlantic for the period from the 22nd through the 25th.
I'm just trying to see this. The European and the GFS are a little different going into this, because the Europeans diving all that cold air initially down in the western half of the U.S., because it pops the ridge up in the east, and I'm just trying to see why it does that. I'm just taking a look.
And if it pops the ridge up the way it's showing.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see it now. So the difference is the GFS dives the shortwave southeastward into Minnesota and the Great Lakes. The European takes that trough and dives it. Let me roll it back. I'm sorry. Keeps going to the 18Z run, which I want to also look at. Of course, now the page is frozen. Hold on. Bear with me, folks.
But whether you're looking at the European or the GFS, Joe, the major disturbance out west, which is helping to pop that ridge up in the east, that would suggest, just like Groundhog Day 1976, possibly temperatures rising through the 40s, maybe even approaching 50, rain, and then boom, in comes the cold air, and all of a sudden you transition over from rain over to snow.
Yeah, the European drops that vortex down into four corners, and I don't know if that's correct. I mean, that seems a little odd to me, considering the overall blocking pattern that we have. I mean, stranger things have happened, but I'm not going to lose sleep over this. With respect to what the European is doing, that's different from the GFS. This is a game that we play every day. For laughs, just to quickly look at the ensembles.
Yes.
See if the ensembles give us a clue. Now, see the European ensembles. This is the European ensemble, looks just like the GFS operational. It doesn't drop the trough down in the southwest. It takes it and moves it into the Great Lakes. Actually, it just holds that trough there right through the end of right through Christmas and beyond. So the ensembles do not the operational does not match up with what the European ensembles are doing. The European ensemble looks like the GFS. So
Okay.
there you go.
All right. And for all of you who want to know more about the groundhog, I call it the Groundhog Day blizzard or mini blizzard here in New York, but all you have to do is just go on Google and type in Groundhog Day Storm 1976, and Wikipedia has a whole page telling you all of what that storm did in 1976 on Groundhog Day. That is a memorable. So I know that in parts of Nova Scotia, they had winds sustained at over 65 and 70 miles an hour, or over 100 kilometers per hour during that storm. And that was a memorable storm system. And for the few hours that it was here in New York, it was quite a storm.
So I just pulled up the European snow map on the 18Z run. The European's been kind of interesting, Joe. But look at the snow maps on the European in the last 5 runs. It keeps every run. It's a little bit further to the east with the eastern flank of that 1-inch line. Just ever so slightly, just keep sliding it a little bit further to the east. It's not gonna slide much more, but this is what this model does through 90 hours. So just for what it's worth, and again, it still won't make a difference, because even if you wind up with some of these amounts, for example, even if Poughkeepsie gets 3.5 and Middletown gets 5.6, it's going to change the rain in both those places. So just bear that in mind.
And let's quickly mention on Super Chat, I see David Schwartz. I had to go back a ways to get his. Thank you very much, David. Leon Probitsky with, I guess, Peter Potamus on his Super Chat icon. And also, more recently, Jason Kaplan. Jason Kaplan writes on his Super Chat, Joe, I am looking forward to this pattern. Hopefully it will deliver. Thanks for all you do, gentlemen.
Oh, appreciate it. The chairman, Scott Briller, has been taking care of his mom. She's been having some good days and some not so good days, but making some progress, and she should be along in a couple of days. So we haven't been doing our Trivia Briller Jeopardy at the end of the show because Scott's been he was not feeling well, and he was recovering himself, and he's taking care of his mom. So we send our best to Mr. Scott Briller, the chairman.
And I brought this up just for you, Joe, because you started the show off talking about New York's coldest day.
Right.
And this is from the New York Times of February 10th, 1934. Headline reads, Mercury 14.3 below zero on New York's coldest day, 6 dead, hundreds treated for frostbitten ears and noses, 8 to 10 below due here today. I might point out that the 14.3 below zero was for the Whitehall building. They were forecasting not from Rockefeller Center in 1934, but from a building in lower Manhattan called the Whitehall building. However, when they looked at the Central Park observations, and that's what is now the record is for Central Park. It's not for the Whitehall building or for any of the other places that they had a thermometer set up back in the day. It was minus 15 at Central Park. But you could see here, look at this. Midnight, 7 below, 1 a.m., 8 below, 3 a.m., 10 below, and finally bottoming out at 7:25 a.m. in lower Manhattan with a low temperature of 14.3 degrees below zero. They finally made it up above zero at noontime when the temperature stood at 2 degrees. And I guess the high for the day was at 5 p.m. when the temperature topped off at 7 above zero. Those were the days, my friends. Those were.
Can you imagine, by the way, can you imagine the media coverage that would ensue?
Yeah.
If we get something, if we were to get something like this, like now.
Oh, forget about it. Forget about it.
They'd be standing there live with the camera on the thermometer, just watching it drop. Yeah. Or certainly they would have the bug on the screen.
They would send somebody, one of their ace reporters, out the TV stations. They would send them out and then say, "Go ahead, cover this for us. Stand out there and look cold." that's and this is coming from somebody who at New York at News 12. I remember there was one day I was out on the what we called the porch outside of the News 12 Westchester studio, and it had to be something like 25 or 30 below zero wind chill, not actual air temperature. But I felt I was going to die by the end of that stand-up. By the way, the last time that the temperature in New York City fell below zero was on Valentine's Day 2016, when the mercury dipped to 1 below zero. The greatest number of consecutive below zero days in New York is 4. That was from December 29th, 1917 to New Year's Day 1918. And of course, as we have on the screen here, the coldest temperature ever recorded at Central Park, minus 15 on February 9th, 1934. And again, this 14.3 below zero was recorded at the Weather Bureau. That's not the National Weather Service, but it was the Weather Bureau way back when. The Weather Bureau office, forecast office at the Whitehall building, I think it was down in Lower Manhattan. No matter which way you slice it or dice it, it was cold back then.
It was. That's just crazy. That was crazy. But
yep.
I can't imagine getting. I mean, I know what minus 14 feels like because I was in New Hampshire. Was it 2016, February of 16? We got down to minus 15 up there. I think that's when it was. And I never been in air temperature that cold. So I can tell you this: there's a big difference between minus 15 wind chill and a minus 15 temperature. Right? It's not the same.
No, it's not. It's
not the same.
It's bitterly, brutally cold. And like I said, in New York City, we have not seen anything below zero since 2016. So it's been 6 years. And even then, just 1 degree below zero, not 14 or 15 below, as was the case in 1934. People say, "Oh, we'll never get that low because of global warming." No, it has nothing to do, I think, with global warming, or maybe a little bit of it has to deal with global warming. But the main reason that we don't see temperatures of 10 and 15 below zero anymore in New York is simply because of the heat island effect. We have just built up this city so much in Manhattan with all of the tall buildings, the concrete, the glass, or whatever. It just cannot radiate. It just traps in all the heat from the daytime hours, and so, what could you say?
Well, we have a super. What I can't say is we have a super chat. Let's just call him BF and say thank you for hitting super chat. But if it's your intention that I'm going to say your name, I am not going to say your name.
No, please.
No. I would recommend whoever you are to adjust that ever so slightly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Change a consonant here, a vowel there, and you'll be much more socially acceptable. Let's put it that way. Oh, God. Right. But at least we didn't get any of the porn bots tonight, which is pretty good. By the way, I'll just do your point about the temperature thing. At least in the time that I've in our work experience in the years, I don't think we've synoptically seen what produced that minus 14 in New York City. So I will say that I'm not saying you're wrong, but I want to revisit that if we ever get to see the synoptic setup as it was in 1934 with that humongous trough that dropped down right into the eastern part of the United States. The cold air never came down into the plains and in the Rockies before it got to the east, that air mass. That cold air mass bodily came down from Canada in a way that it never got to modify before it moved into the east.
And was there any snow on the ground? If there was a good snow cover,
that I don't know.
Too. Yeah.
That I don't know. I do know, and this will really anger snow lovers out there. I do know because I looked. The high that came down went off the southeast coast, and it warmed up and rained. They never saw a flake or an ice pellet.
Yeah.
Like
Well, there you
like
go.
4 days like 4 days later, it was in the low 40s.
See? And they're probably all the snow lovers back then shaking their heads saying, all that cold air going to waste.
Yep. And not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. All
Now
right.
tomorrow night we go back for one more night, thanks to a talk I'm giving to an 8:30 start time. And by the way, I would like to invite Joe. I'm going to put it. I know I can't. It doesn't come up as a hyperlink, but I am going to put the URL up. I'm giving a talk at 7 o'clock tomorrow night for the library in South Huntington.
You could
About
email me the link and I can put it up.
Okay, I'm going to do that right now. The talk is called The Christmas Star, and what it is that it is an astronomer's answer, or an astronomer's attempt to answer the question: what was the Star of Bethlehem? What was what may have been in the sky for the appearance of the Christmas star that was seen all those years ago by the Magi? I'm just making sure that I get, yes, there it is. I can put it right there and link. So I'm gonna have Joe put the link up for this library talk. And if any of you want to, you have to register for the talk. But if you go to the link that I'm sending to Joe right now and register, you can be part of that. You can hear the talk tomorrow night when I give it at 7 o'clock, and then after I'm finished, after I do a Q&A, right over to Joe and Joe, which we will start at 8:30 tomorrow night.
Okay, and that link is now on the chat board. Now hold on. You just gave me a tiny URL link. Why did this come up?
I didn't give you a tiny URL link.
No, I'm sorry, you didn't. That was weird. Hold on a second. Let me try it this way. Copy. No, I meant a small. There it is. Okay. My I don't know how I had
Yes, there
a
it is.
different link. So the link is up there for Joe Rayo's talk. Joe Rayo's talk on the Christmas star.
And if you're interested, I might point out, Joe, this was second only to the this topic was second only to the Radio City Music Hall Christmas show, when the Hayden Planetarium ran it back in the 60s and the 70s. And for whatever reason, I have no clue why, they stopped about 20 years ago doing the Christmas show at the planetarium. And many planetariums don't do this show anymore. I don't know whether or not it's the reason that they don't want to offend anybody. I myself did an article about this many years ago, and I got 200 emails from people in the aftermath of it being published on space.com. 100 people wrote to me and said, we enjoy whenever you write about astronomical events on space.com, but why did you waste your time this week writing about an event which we all know never happened? That was from one half of the people on space.com, and the other half of the people who read my column on space.com got very angry with me, saying, how can you possibly say that it was anything but a supernatural event? And in fact, one woman called me a name which I will not say here, but it was somewhat distressing at the time. And I said to Renata, I said, well, this is wonderful. I've PO'd all of the atheists, and I PO'd all of the Christians with this topic.
Well, that probably then. I always say if you get both sides mad at you, then you're in a good place.
That's what it is. And I think that's why, sadly, a lot of planetariums across the country no longer do this show. And it was wonderful. As a very young boy in the 60s, I remember at the Hayden Planetarium, you'd come in, they'd have Christmas music. The dome had wreaths that lit up all around the dome, and there was snowstorms, and there's Santa flying across the sky, and they had Cyril Richard, which some of you may remember. He was Captain Hook in the Broadway version of Peter Pan with Mary Martin. He recited on tape, of course, The Night Before Christmas, that was written by Clement Clark Moore. They had William Warfield, who had this deep, resonant voice, who read from St. Matthew out of the Bible. And it was very, I mean, people would leave that show sometimes with tears in their eyes. And now they don't do it anymore because, again, it's a different society that we live in. But I offer it to the libraries. The libraries look upon it and say, hey, that sounds like a good topic. And so they take it. And I'm doing one, again, about this topic tomorrow night. Click on that link, register, and I hope to see a lot of you out there for the show tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for the South Huntington Library. And then after that, we'll all come running over to Joe's YouTube channel, and we will have another discussion about weather and whether or not we're going to see much in the way of snow or rain at the end of the week and for Christmas and everything else on our Joe and Joe show, which tomorrow night will be at 8:30.
8:30 tomorrow night. And for those of you who want winter weather coverage all winter long with extra videos from me, just click at the chat. Click on the link that's pinned at the top of the chat board, and you can join my subscription site at patreon.com/meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or download my 2 free weather apps, the Meteorologist Joe Cioffi weather app and Angry Ben's Angry Weather app, both on Google Play and on the App Store. So we will see you tomorrow night at 8:30. Have a great night. Night, everybody.
Or reservoir.